feels like an easy question, right? Reality is just itself. Something you can see, smell, taste. All of it is real, right? Or maybe it's just you. It's your memories, relationships, things in your head that keep you grounded as a human. What makes you, you. They have to be real, right? Because if those aren't real, then who actually are you? We interact with life as everything is real. Senses, food, the device you're watching this video on. Yeah, how can we know for sure if it's actually real? And more disturbingly, what would it mean if it's not? If a simulation was so perfect, you never could notice. Is it any less real than a so-called reality? But here's something to think about. It's hard to say what is real without thinking about what is unreal, because our world works in a dualistic nature. Good and evil, strong and weak, light and dark, everything is relative, even existence. So what does it mean to be unreal? Are hallucinations real? Well, no, right? They're not really there. But you could argue neither is reality. Everything we see goes through the medium of our eyes as photons, which are reconstructed in our brains. Is that fake or reality? Or is reality itself a hallucination? But maybe we say reality is real because it isn't flawed. You can wake up from a dream. There are times when there aren't hallucinations. So our reality has to be real because there's a wall of security that makes it feel real. Yet isn't that what a simulation would want? The first time this idea was heavily touched on and developed was around 380 BC. This idea from a philosopher you've probably heard of can help us dig deeper into the idea. Plato wrote Book 7 of the Republic, and more specifically where he presents something called Plato's Cave. It's a philosophical allegory that is meant to help us understand what reality really is. But if you look at it closely, it destabilizes the very idea of reality itself. Here's a quick summary. A group of prisoners are chained inside a cave. Behind them, a fire casts a shadow on the wall. Shadows of people, objects, movements. That's all the prisoners have ever seen, so they see the shadows as reality itself. But why would they even question it? If it's all they've ever known, why would they even doubt it? But then, one prisoner escapes. He climbs out of the cave and sees the world as it really is. Light, colour, depth, life. He's free, right? So naturally he goes back into the cave, tries to tell the others, free them from their prison, tries to explain them what they're missing out on, but they dismiss it. They think he's insane, a conspiracist of such. If you've lived a certain way all your life, it must be real, right? The metaphor is clear, but the deeper question here, one that Plato didn't fully explore, what makes the freed man's reality any more real than the shadows? I mean, he's free, right? He's escaped the cave, but how can we know that we're not in another cave? He saw something new, something unfamiliar. He broke out of the cave, but that proves nothing. The only thing that makes his world feel more real is that he came after the old one. Think about your dreams, for example. You don't question them while you're in them. You can walk, you can think, you can talk. It must be real by those standards, right? But when you wake up, you say, that wasn't real, I'm out of that. I know it was all in my head. But why? Just because you woke up? Who's to say you're not dreaming now? If our senses can deceive us in a dream, if our brain makes things feel real, what makes them reliable when we're awake? We use our senses to say, this is real, but by those same standards, the dream was real too. We're never awake, we're just in another medium of experience. That's the central message of Plato's Cave. We only question reality when we're shown a higher level, another dimension in our perception of reality, but there's never a guarantee that we're at the top, and even then, what makes that any less questionable? If a simulation was so perfect, you'd never know you're inside of it. Yet if the world was a simulation, it should be perfect. The most dangerous illusion isn't one that glitches, it's the one that keeps a prisoner complacent. Yet this goes deeper. We could say the world of shadows is flawed. It doesn't make sense to believe in it. But the shadows seemed real to the prisoners. This is what makes the allegory dangerous. It says what feels real is real to the one that's experiencing it. Everything is empirical, which means we could be watching shadows right now, living in a world to something greater that looks as shallow in 2D as a cave wall. Yet, why would we question it? This all leads to the question, why do we feel that life is, well, real? If we don't know, shouldn't we always be skeptical? Yet most of us live our lives without ever thinking about it, just taking it as it goes. It's not because we've proven the world is authentic, it's because it feels consistent, familiar. It's a system that makes sense to us. It doesn't glitch, it doesn't question us, there are no fourth wall breaks, and that is comforting. Think of it like you're watching a film and suddenly the character looks out the screen and says, "Still watching, aren't you, John?" That feeling of security you would have felt, the fourth wall that you put in place, the barrier, your barrier, completely shattered. The feeling that you are watching the show, but really you are being watched. We have a wall of security built up from the consistency within reality. Such as with Plato's cave. Yet one glitch, if one mirror moves too slow, or you hear noises when there's no one, that scares us, as it implies we're not alone in our layer of reality, and in fact, we are being watched. We become afraid not because we saw something unreal, but because it threatens the layer we believed was real. This is the same feeling that the prisoner would have felt. In a way, light burning his eyes with unfamiliar colours and shapes. Plato didn't just describe enlightenment, he described disorientation. But that is the most dangerous part. The comfort we feel, it doesn't come from proof. It comes from the illusion of control, the belief that we're on the outside and not the inside. We feel we're in control, we understand the world as it is, we interact with the only real reality in existence. All it takes is one crack, one moment that doesn't fit, to shatter the whole illusion. But arguably, the worst collapse is silence. What if nothing shatters? What if we're just living in a reality we suspect isn't real, but we can never even trust ourselves to say for sure? That's the most terrifying implication of the cave. You're not supposed to want to leave. Why would you? Enter a world everyone sees as fake but you see as true? Why would you ever take the red pill? Okay, so we talked about how you can't really know you're in a simulation, but let's ask a deeper question. Why can't we know? Without going too deep, as that's for another video, we can touch upon an idea from Immanuel Kant's philosophy to help us using his work on the distinction between the noumenion and the phenomenon. Noumenion is what Kant described as the thing in itself, reality as it truly is, independent from any observer. But we don't have direct access to it. What we actually experience is the phenomena. The filtered process version of reality that reaches us through our senses. Just think about it. Seeing isn't just seeing. It's photons hitting our eyes, signals firing through neurons, a reconstruction in our brain. Everything we see is a simulation of sorts. It's already mediated through our biology. So if our senses are just an output device, a function that takes in and processes external data, how could we ever know if the data, or the noumenion, is, well, real? How could we ever know if this is a simulation if either way we are still wired machines? That poses the question, what even is a simulation? When I say simulation, you probably think about some sci-fi world, cables, computer programs, or some human stuck in a machine like the Matrix. But that vision is deeply human. Computers, wires, electricity, all of these things are within our world. If we are really in a simulation, it doesn't make sense to describe it using the very things that are part of the simulation, the very things that are fabricated by the higher level. To think clearly about what a simulation really is, we have to think beyond that. A simulation, at its core, is a lower level system governed by a higher level one, run by its observers. Maybe it's deterministic, maybe it's divine, some sort of God playing with us. But the idea is the same, it's higher or beyond us. But even then, maybe the idea of higher or lower can be flawed, or attributing vague human dualities like higher and lower to a world we really don't understand. Categories that are themselves part of the simulation. So all this talk about higher civilization inevitably leads us to why? Why would any advanced society bother creating a simulation? Isn't that just toying with sentient lives? Well, first, this question assumes their reality mirrors our own, which contradicts what I said earlier, but still, struggles exist in every world, just in different forms. So let's create our own path as an example. Imagine a point in our civilization where suffering has been eradicated, no poverty, no war, no disease, no heartbreak, no death. At first glance this sounds perfect, but then something strange happens. Life starts to blur. Because the world works in dualities, you can only appreciate joy if you've known sorrow. Without sadness, happiness becomes meaningless, just background noise. In the world of constant comfort, the emotional spectrum collapses into a flat line. Nothing is awful, nothing is incredible either, it's just numb. And that numbness, something terrifying arises. A craving, not for pleasure, but for pain. Because at least pain means something. There's an idea in biology and psychology. Animals and even people sometimes choose pain over nothing. Because nothingness, emotional void. Because nothingness or emotional void is worse. It's not just absence, it's suffocation. Without suffering there's no triumph. Without ugliness there's no beauty. Without death, what gives life its shape? So what does a civilization do when it's forgotten how to feel? It might create a world with pain, with heartbreak, with chaos, not out of cruelty but out of necessity, to remember what feeling is even is. The simulation becomes their emotional mirror, a place to rediscover empathy, to reconnect to the human condition they've lost. We've already seen this impulse play out. Historically, in empirical China, when a royal prince misbehaved, he couldn't be punished directly due to his status, so instead his closest friend or servant was beaten as a proxy. The punishment wasn't just symbolic, it was designed to emotionally ground the prince, to force him to feel something, to make him accountable through another. What if an entire society needed that grounding? What if we are their emotional proxy? Of course, that theory can have a darker turn. What if this isn't about empathy at all? What if they enjoy watching us suffer? Not maliciously, but because it lets them feel superior. In a world where everyone is equal, programmed, dull. A monochromatic society where all achievements are handed out, all personalities are regulated, and all novelty is gone. Enter Schadenfreude, the twisted pleasure in another's pain. Could our suffering be their entertainment? Could we be their escape from numbness? If that's true, if we were created just for their benefit, what does it say about us? Does it strip our world of authenticity? Does being toys mean life is meaningless? Or if we can't escape the simulation, should that even matter in the first place? So another idea that we haven't explored is what are the actual odds that are in a simulation or not? If we assume certain axioms, especially under the lens of probability and large-scale systems, the picture shifts. Even without invoking an infinite universe, it's reasonable to think that civilization could eventually create a simulation, that itself creates another simulation, and so on. This recursive process leads to a spiraling hierarchy of simulated worlds. Now imagine this happening repeatedly across a vast stretch of time. In any sufficient large or long-lasting universe, or even a finite one, this chain of simulations becomes increasingly likely. But in an infinite universe, it's virtually guaranteed. This ties to the idea of the Boltzmann brain. In an infinite cosmos, anything that can happen will happen infinitely. So what does this imply? It means that the number of simulated realities could become infinite. And if there are infinite simulated worlds but only one real base reality, the odds that we are the original, or the real one, is 1 divided by infinity. That's not just low, it tends towards 0. There's nothing intrinsic that marks our reality as special. We're just one thread among countless others. But here's the paradox. Even if the probability is infinitesimally small, it's not 0. One reality has to be real. That alone challenges how we use infinity in our logic, because while something may be statistically negligible, it's not impossible. Even in a finite universe, the logic holds. You don't need backward causality, a new tree of simulations that can begin anywhere at any point. Civilizations on the other side of the universe could have already launched a countless simulation, but would have no way of knowing. Time and scale alone provide enough space for these layers to multiply, and from what we understand of life, time on a cosmological scale is a prerequisite of its emergence. So we're left here, not certain we're simulated, but staring down the probability that we almost certainly are. So far we've explored uncertainty, recursion, and our inability to know whether we're living in a simulation. And you might be tempted to say, well, if we can't know, should we care? It doesn't make a difference, right? It's a fair point, but that intuition collapses under scrutiny, especially when we ask, does truth matter beyond experience? To explore this, let's turn to a famous thought experiment by the philosopher Robert Nozick, the experience machine. Imagine a perfect simulation, a machine that can give you any experience you desire. Love, success, adventure, fulfillment. Once plugged in, you wouldn't know it's fake, you'll believe everything is real. But here's the twist. Most people, when asked, say they wouldn't plug in. Why not? If you never knew the difference, why would it matter? It's because we don't just want experiences. We want them to be connected to something that is real. We want to earn our joy, fight our battles, to suffer, struggle, and rise for something that exists beyond us. We value authenticity, even if we can never prove it. And this is where the simulation begins to feel wrong. Not because it's painful or broken, but because it turns our deepest experiences into fabrications. We want our triumph to be genuine, not outcomes written in code. We want free will, autonomy, the sense that our lives are our own. A pleasant simulation may feel good, but it violates our sense of agency. So what makes life real? There's a certain virtue in feeling the world is real. If our struggles are real, our pain matters, our choices echo into something larger, then we aren't just passive passengers, we're authors of our own lives. But here's the paradox. If we can never prove authenticity, if we might always be inside a simulation, then is belief alone enough to make life meaningful? Can the feeling of reality give us value, even if it's a facade? We praise, struggle, love, effort, sacrifice. But what if all these virtues are pre-scripted, part of a narrative we didn't choose? Do they still count? The more we search for truth, the more we realise we might be chasing ghosts in a mirror, forever trapped in a system we can't step outside of. It's circular. We define reality using our senses, but our senses are part of the system. We rely on science, but science just maps out the rules of the sandbox. It's all self-referential. We're pointing to things inside the box to prove the box is real. But this circularity might not be escapable. But maybe it's not supposed to be. Maybe certainty is overrated. Maybe truth was never about lies beneath the surface. Maybe it was always about the sincerity with which we live, even if we're living inside a dream. Because if we love, if we hurt, if we choose with conviction, does it matter if the world is real? Do we make it real by believing in it anyways?